Let's start in Seattle, Rich. That game came right down to the wire in OT. What are your thoughts on the Seattle Seahawks coming away with the victory?
Well, it was a had-to-have-it game, and they got it by the skin of their chins. They had to have it. Geno performed well, really emotional after the game. Their futures were still up in the air. Who knows if the season's over, if the season's not over. Geno broke a number of Seattle Seahawks records, completions, attempts, yards, completion percentage, 70%. All franchise records for Geno Smith in his first year as a full-time starter. Huge for him. Huge for the Seattle Seahawks because the Detroit Lions showed up even though they got eliminated. That was just the weirdest dynamic I've ever seen in playoff football or in the regular season.
Why do you think the NFL did it like that? I mean, in theory, it would have made more sense to have all teams playing at the same time, but they had the Rams Seahawks kick first and then the Lions Packers go in the evening. Why would you do it like that?
Because there was no other way to put a relevant playoff game after that. You know, there would have been no other relevant playoff games with implications after that. Outside of that, you would have put, Browns Steelers or something after that? People would have just been watching two teams with no chance to go to the playoffs, and the ratings would have been bottom dweller. At least people watched this game all the way through because it had implications. If Green Bay won, if Detroit, and it was a competitive game, it was a smart decision by the league.
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, I certainly did not expect the Rams to put up that big of a fight, but you know better than I do, these division rivalries, people get up for games that are so meaningless. Well, why was this game competitive in the first place, Rich?
It was competitive because, I mean, it's the NFL. Any given Sunday, you know how that goes. Any given Sunday, every team is going to compete. Every team is going to give their best, and that's what happened. In Green Bay, I mean, Detroit's playing with a lot of pride. You know, Dan Campbell got those boys fired up, you know, and it's a division opponent. I think that was another smart move by the NFL, is making the last two games of the season, always division games, because you know those opponents the best, you know those teams the best, and you know you're gonna fight like hell, regardless of if you're in the playoffs or not. I mean, the Rams were out of it beyond elimination. Don't even have a draft pick, but they gave Seattle all they could handle just because it's a division opponent. You know them well. Jalen Ramsey played a heck of a game in that ball game. It was crazy.
We saw a little bit of a homecoming with Bobby Wagner coming back to Seattle, and Jalen Ramsey had a hell of a game. And then once Seattle pulls it off in OT, all eyes are on Detroit and the Packers. I mean, everyone up in Seattle is hashtagging One Pride, rooting for the Lions more than any other city outside of Detroit. And Detroit goes on the road into a hostile environment and a need-to-have-it game for Aaron Rodgers, and Detroit wins it. I mean, the Dan Campbell, to me as a Detroiter, has changed the identity of this organization tenfold. I don't think the vibes are just different here in Detroit, Rich. They had absolutely nothing to play for, and they came out and got the dub. I mean, talk to me a little bit about the Lions. Talk to me a little bit about Aaron Rodgers, what may be going through his head right now.
I mean, it's really cool for the Lions. I mean, they're establishing winning culture. They're establishing how to win, how to show up and expect to win, how to go to Lambeau, which they hadn't won in Lambeau in a long time. I think that's only the second loss in December for Green Bay since LaFleur has been the coach. So that's insane right there. They came in there, and that's big for going into next year. I would expect them to be favored to win that division going into next year with how they've played, and hopefully they're able to get a few free agents and retool, get a few draft picks. But they look really good. It's really impressive because people were calling for Dan Campbell's job at one point. You know, I think they were 1-7, and they go 7-1 down the stretch. That's insane. 7-1 down the stretch. I mean, only coach ever got fired after 7-1 was Flores, and he's suing the league now. So it's something to be proud of.
J.J. Watt is retiring now, and the Cardinals, unfortunately, had to go out and give him his farewell tour against your 49ers. Brock Purdy, Rich. Brock Purdy and the Niners look very, very, very much so for real. This is no, new event that is occurring. But when you go and slap 38 points on the board, you're just super nonchalant and win, what is it, fifth game in a row for Brock now? What's going to stop the 49ers?
That's a great question. I don't know. They need to shore up that run game. I mean, run defense, though. That's one thing. Diamador Lenore is going to have to grow up really fast in these playoffs, because he's had a rough couple goes at it. Devontae, anybody would have had a rough go at it. But this week, the big play to AJ Green early in the game, is to play. People are going to take shots, and Tayshaun Gip is playing some of his best football. Man, he's played well for a long time, and I know he's a little older now, but he got a lot of picks under his belt, and it's just he's in rhythm right now. I called it when Jimmy Ward came back. I said they would keep him and Talanoa Hufanga together. And I knew that they would keep working well, and Jimmy would be on the nickel. They'd get their best 11 out there. And 2 interceptions in this game were huge. But it was really cool to see JJ, 2 sacks in his final game. He's calling it quits. He's about to be a dad. Class of 2011, another class of 2011 alumni. And it's really cool to see. He's a Hall of Famer. He'll get his gold jacket in 5 years, and hopefully I'll be at the ceremony.
Well, Richard, in this game, and this is a rare stat, but we're gonna call it, Brock Purdy is the second highest passer rating through 5 career QB starts, behind only Kurt Warner. I don't frankly know how that's even possible, but God bless him, man.
Mitchell, some people are just ready for the moment, and he was ready. I mean, they've averaged 30 points a game since Christian McCaffrey was acquired. I mean, excluding the Kansas City game because he was off of 2 days. So outside of that game, they're 10-0 since then, averaging 30 points a game. Like, he's made a huge difference, and they gave Debo a few reps. He was on a pitch count this week, but gave him some reps, got him in there, got him contact, because you need that going into the playoffs. But the way they were using Elijah Mitchell, Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, Jawan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk went for 1,000 yards. You heard everything coming into camp. Brandon Ayuk is going to go off this year. Brandon Ayuk, and he was really very steady the entire year. Stayed healthy, was consistent through all 3 quarterbacks. He ate with all 3 quarterbacks. Obviously, Trey Lance only played 2 games, but he was a steady part of the ship. And Nicholas John Bosa. Now, they won't let you bet on it no more, Mitchell. They won't let you bet. Like, I'd put my life savings on it.
Well, you would have been right from week 1, Rich. You would have been right from week 1 of the preseason, because that's how long you've been tooting it. You've been spot on with a lot. And we got to do a recap session of some of our call-outs, because I don't want to brag, but I called Tony Pollard.
You did.
You called Nicholas John Bosa. We had some other good call-outs throughout the year, and I'm sure the rest of this postseason, we're going to have ample opportunity to make some predictions. But, Rich, I'm going to ask you one more difficult question, and then we'll sign this thing off. But if you were still a member of the San Francisco 49ers going into the wild card weekend, which of the 3 teams would you have most wanted to see as your opponent?
Well,
the Seattle Seahawks, the Detroit Lions, or the Green Bay Packers?
Probably Seattle, just because you know them so well, division opponent, you know what you're going to get. I feel like Kyle has a plan for him. I just feel like it'd be a good game. Those Green Bay would have been fine, because Green Bay just doesn't deal with San Francisco well in the playoffs, regardless of where the game is. I mean, you're going all the way back to Kaepernick, going to Green Bay, going to Lambeau and running for 200 or something crazy and taking the win when he took the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl that year, to last year when they went to Lambeau and got the win on their way to the NFC Championship game. 2019, we took them behind the woodshed. So it's just not. Green Bay doesn't have a good track record playing the 49ers in the playoffs, so that would have been fine. But Detroit is just nasty, gritty, grimy, and they're gonna get it done. Their offensive line is way better than you think. Their defensive line is way better than you think. They're young in the secondary. They're too young to know any better. They got a good running. They got 2 good backs. Swift is back. They got a good receiving core. And the more they get Jameson Williams involved, like the more healthy he gets, they're going to be even more dangerous. Jared Goff is an above average starting quarterback. And he showed that this year. He showed it. I think he's top 5 in yards now. And it was a good year for him.